Ever feel like you're building a rocket ship, but all you've got is duct tape and like a wing and a prayer?
Uh-huh, yeah.
That's what starting a project can feel like sometimes.
Yeah.
But what if there was a better way? Like, what if you could launch your projects confidently and actually land them smoothly, even when, things get a little bumpy,
Yeah,
which they always do?
they do.
That's what we're diving into today, the essentials of project management. And to help us navigate, we're using the HBR guide to project management.
It's interesting, these principles apply whether you are literally building a rocket ship with a team or you're just trying to, plan a family vacation. It's all about having a framework for success.
Framework. I like that. So the HBR guide, it breaks down a project into 4 phases: planning, build up, implementation, and closeout. But you're saying these phases aren't like a straight line, there's overlap. So what does that look like in the real world?
So imagine building a house.
Okay.
You wouldn't wait until the foundation is fully cured before you start even thinking about the framing. Right. You're probably already ordering lumber, scheduling those contractors, all while that concrete is drying. That's what that overlap is. It's anticipating and preparing for the next phase while you're still in the current one.
So you're constantly thinking ahead, making sure all the pieces are lining up.
Yeah.
And I would guess communication is key here, especially when you've got a whole crew involved. Speaking of which, the HBR guide talks about the importance of a project charter. Why is this document, this roadmap, so crucial for avoiding, like, project chaos?
Think of a project charter like a contract between everyone involved. You've got the sponsors funding the project, you've got the project manager who's leading the charge, and then, of course, you have the team that's actually doing the work. It outlines exactly what you're building, why you're building it, and how you're going to measure success. It just helps avoid situations where, you're halfway through a project and somebody's going, wait, I thought we were building a tree house, not a rocket ship.
Been there, done that. It's amazing how quickly things can veer off when everyone has a different vision.
Yeah.
And speaking of things going off the rails, let's talk about that dreaded project killer, scope creep. What are some practical ways to, like, wrangle that beast and keep it from derailing our well-laid plans?
Snope creep, it's insidious. It starts with like these small, seemingly insignificant requests that seem like easy enough to accommodate.
Right.
But each like small addition, it adds time, it adds complexity, and before you know it, you're way over budget, you're behind schedule. A powerful tool to combat this is honestly as simple as a change request form. So anytime somebody wants to add something new, capture it formally.
Okay.
This allows you to evaluate the impact on the project's timeline, the budget, resources, before just saying yes.
Oh, I like that.
Right.
Because every yes to a new feature or a change needs to be weighed against its potential to, completely derail the project.
Absolutely.
Love that. A change request form, it creates a process, it adds a little bit of friction, which can be a good thing when it comes to project management.
It introduces a moment of reflection and evaluation before decisions are made, preventing those like knee-jerk, sure, we can do that responses
Yeah.
that often come back to haunt you.
It sounds like having those clear boundaries and processes in place, super important for project management.
Yeah.
But even with the best laid plans, things don't always go perfectly.
Never.
The HBR guide actually talks about the importance of time management and features this case study, a rush to failure. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so this case study, it's kind of a cautionary tale about what happens when we prioritize speed over quality.
Okay.
It analyzes a project where unrealistic deadlines and that like constant pressure to deliver quickly, it led to, some shortcuts in quality assurance.
Oh,
And ultimately, this resulted in this domino effect of problems, costly rework, missed deadlines, and it really damaged the team's morale.
right, because it's like you're constantly playing catch up.
Exactly.
So it's a good reminder that sometimes slowing down, like focusing on doing things right the first time, it can actually save you a lot of time and headaches in the long run.
Absolutely. That's where effective time management techniques are so important. And actually, the HBR guide highlights the power of time boxing.
Okay.
Not as a way to like become a slave to the clock, but as this tool to gain control over your schedule and really, make time for what matters most.
Okay, so how does time boxing actually work in practice? You mentioned it involves like breaking down your work into smaller chunks.
Yeah, it's about allocating, specific blocks of time to specific tasks
Okay.
and then really sticking to those blocks as much as possible. And, this approach can be really helpful in preventing multitasking,
Right.
which often leads to, decreased focus, decreased productivity.
Yeah, you're bouncing all over the place.
Right, exactly. But when you know, okay, from 2:00 to 4 p.m. today,
Mm.
I am working on this design mock-up. You're less likely to get sidetracked by, those emails, those other urgent but less important tasks.
And this ties into, I imagine, the idea of like an adaptive approach to project management that's also mentioned in the guide.
Yeah.
So how does this approach, this adaptive approach, help us to kind of deal with the inevitable curveballs that life and, intern projects tend to throw our way?
Yeah, I mean, the adaptive approach is all about acknowledging that in the real world, things change. Like, you can't predict everything, right?
Right.
And clinging rigidly to a plan when, the ground is shifting beneath you can be a recipe for disaster. So instead of trying to plan for every possible contingency, break the project down into smaller chunks, smaller iterations.
Okay, so you're working in smaller, more manageable increments.
Yeah.
What then? How do you actually adapt as you go?
Regular reviews are key. So at the end of each iteration, you step back, you evaluate what worked well, what didn't work so well, what needs to be adjusted. This could involve refining your approach, reprioritizing tasks, or even, revisiting the project scope if you need to.
Oh, wow.
The key is to stay flexible, communicate openly, and just be willing to adjust course as needed.
That makes a lot of sense. And I imagine this iterative, adaptive approach probably makes it a lot easier to incorporate feedback
Absolutely.
and keep stakeholders in the loop.
Yeah, and speaking of stakeholders, the HBR guide really emphasizes the importance of those regular stakeholder reviews.
Right.
And it's crucial to remember that, stakeholder reviews aren't just about presenting a laundry list of what you've accomplished.
Yeah.
They're an opportunity to engage in a two-way dialogue, to really share that progress, address concerns, and ensure that everyone is still aligned on the project's goals, the overall objective.
Yeah, so preparation is key here. You're not just like showing up and winging it.
Exactly, yeah. Before each stakeholder review, take the time to really anticipate, what questions might they have, gather that relevant data, and rehearse your kind of key messages.
Okay.
This shows, professionalism, and it ensures that you can present information clearly and concisely.
You look put together.
Exactly. And remember to actively solicit that feedback from stakeholders, be open to their perspectives, even if they, differ from your own.
Of course.
It's all about fostering that collaborative environment.
Right, everyone feels heard.
Exactly. And valued, which ultimately, I think, contributes to a project's success.
Now, when it comes to wrapping up a project, what are some key things to keep in mind to kind of like ensure that smooth transition and capture those valuable lessons learned? So we've covered a lot of ground here, from like navigating scope creep to embracing that adaptive approach.
You have.
But before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on something that I feel like is often overlooked in, all those project management textbooks. Celebrating success.
Yeah.
Like, it's easy to get so caught up in like the, I don't know, intensity of a project that we forget to acknowledge those wins along the way.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Celebrating those milestones, both big and small.
Yeah.
It's so crucial for, maintaining morale, motivation.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be anything like elaborate or anything.
Right.
It could be as simple as taking 5 minutes to acknowledge everyone's hard work during a team meeting or even having, a virtual high five session after a successful presentation.
I love that. Celebrating those wins, it creates that positive feedback loop, right?
It does.
Reminding everyone why they're putting in all that effort. And when it comes to wrapping up a project, completely wrapping it up, the HBR guide talks about conducting effective lessons learned sessions. And it sounds like this is about more than just ticking a box and saying, well, we did it.
Totally. A lessons learned session, it's a golden opportunity to reflect on the project, as a whole. What worked well? Were there any, pinpoint areas for improvement? It's about taking those insights and helping you and your team, grow, improve for those future projects.
So how can we make sure that those lessons learned sessions are actually productive and not just another meeting that gets added to the calendar and then quickly forgotten?
The key is to create a safe space for that open and honest feedback.
Okay.
Encourage everyone to share their perspective, both positive and negative, without fear of judgment. One really effective technique is to frame questions in a constructive way. So instead of asking, what went wrong,
Uh,
try what could we have done differently?
oh, that's a good one. That subtle shift in language, I feel like that makes a big difference
It does.
in creating a much more collaborative, less, blame-oriented environment.
Exactly. And then, remember to document those lessons learned so more accessible so they can be referenced for future projects.
Mm.
It's all about turning those experiences into valuable kind of organizational knowledge.
This entire deep dive has been so insightful. I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on project management, not just as a set of tools and techniques, but really as a way of thinking and approaching challenges. Any final words of wisdom to leave our listeners with?
Remember, managing a project, it's a lot like navigating a ship through uncharted waters.
Okay.
There will be storms, there will be calm seas, there will be those unexpected detours and moments of, pure exhilaration.
Right.
But with a sturdy compass, which is your project plan,
I like that.
a skilled crew, which is your team, and the ability to adapt to those changing tides, you will reach your destination with confidence. And honestly, like a treasure trove of valuable experience.
That is a fantastic analogy. Thanks so much for joining me on this incredible deep dive into the world of project management. And to our listeners, remember, whether you are launching a startup or simply trying to organize, your sock drawer, these principles can help you navigate any project, any challenge with greater clarity, confidence, and maybe even a little bit of fun along the way.
Oh.
Until next time, happy projecting.